History is not so exciting without talking about kings, queens, and dynasties, right? Now, if I ask you to name the five greatest kings of India from, let's say, the ninth century, who would you name? Whoever you name, there is one dynasty that just cannot be missed. And that is the Chola Empire, which was at its peak between the ninth and 13th centuries. The early Cholas were actually mentioned even before the ninth century in the Sangam literature. Their war feats, contributions to art and architecture, their administrative reforms are so great that they are bound to bring goosebumps to any listener, Indian or foreign. On today's episode of Indic Echoes, we will be talking about the great kings from this dynasty and their contributions to our society. To speak with us, we have a very interesting storyteller and historian, Mr. Ramesh Vangipuram. He is such an ardent fan of the Cholas that he quit his corporate career in search of the Chola accomplishments. He has traveled the length and breadth of the land that was once ruled by the Cholas, searching for inscriptions, generations that are still alive, war fields, and the routes that the army might have potentially taken. His book on the Chola Wars, War Path, is due for release in just a few months, and I'm so happy that he has taken some time off to speak to us about this topic right in time. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you, Saranya.
So let's start by asking, which is the first Chola that we know?
See, basically, when we come to the three Tamil kingdoms of Chera, Chola, and Pandya, they have references right from Ramayana. They have references in Ramayana and Mahabharata. So we do not exactly know who founded these dynasties, even though there were repeated references to these dynasties right from, as I said, the epic period into the historical period. There is reference of these three kingdoms in Ashoka's edicts, but we do not have exactly we don't have any idea as to who founded these dynasties. If we go by the Chola records, they consider themselves as descendants from the sun. So they start their dynasty with Manu, then Ikshvaku, then they have some mythical kings, and then they come to the Sangam kings. Again, Edward Das research on the Cholas. Here actually he dates back to Chola. He has gone back, what I can say, to the Chola genealogy right up to 3020 BCE, which is almost closer to the Mahabharata period. And he says the first king was Eri Oliyan Vendan. But still, we don't have any details or historical records of these kings. The early Chola kings, or we can call them as Puranic Chola kings, Manunedi Soran or Sibi Chakravarti, where history has been mixed with some kind of mythical element to give them a kind of a hero status. But we do not know about these details as to where they existed, from where they ruled, and we do not have any historical records as such. We only have what you can say, a mythical record of these kings. But later, the next set of kings, who we call as the Sangam kings, we have considerable records. Okay? But again, these records are mostly literary records. We do not have inscriptions as such. And these kings, we do not know much about the first or second Sangam kings. But we have considerable history of the third Sangam king, starting from Ilanjit Chenni and then Karigal Valavan, who probably lived in the first century or second century CE. And after that, his successors that included Nedinkilli, Kochengannan or Koperam Cholan and others. So again, these kings have records in literature, Tamil Sangam literature, but we do not have any historical records as to their administration or reign as such. So the actual...
Is it because that they did not follow the practice of inscribing on, let's say, rocks or temple walls, or is it because they probably did it and, we don't have those records?
We are not sure. But when it comes to inscriptions, okay, the construction of temples probably began only by around 5th and 6th century when the Bhakti movement started taking shape. So, Pallava king, Mahendra Pallava, is credited with the first construction of a proper temple. Yes, his inscriptions in Bandagapattu and Mamandur talk about constructing a cave temple without the use of any other building materials like bricks or mortar or other building materials. And he says that I have built a temple just by it's a rock cut temple, it's just a cave temple, and I have not used any of the building materials. So probably the temples in Sangam period or before that probably existed as small structures made of wood or probably some kind of shamiana or clothing, but they did not have a proper structure to have inscriptions. So the inscriptions probably started a little later when the temples were built with the rocks and granite. That started only by around 6th century. Before that, the temples did exist, but probably on a smaller scale. It was not on a larger scale. So the inscriptions started taking shape only when this first Pandyan Empire under Kadungon Pandyan and the Pallava Empire and Mahendra Pallava started taking shape. So after that, the subsequent kings followed that practice of inscriptions. But there was no proper record. They did not record everything in their inscription. That particular recording of historical data and inscriptions started with Rajaraja Cholan's period. Rajaraja started that in 988, his first inscription, where he gives the genealogy of his dynasty, and then he talks about historical events that happened, and he started updating that particular record subsequently on a periodic basis. So from Rajarajan, we have a concrete record as to what happened during the Chola period. And before that, what happened, it entirely depended on what Rajaraja and other kings had to say. Because they have included the genealogy of their forefathers, their ancestors. But those forefathers and ancestors existed in literature and you can say in mythology, or they existed in history, but what you can say with a mix-up of mythology. So the literature was the first one. The Sangam literature gives a lot of details about the Chola kings, but that was in literature. Inscriptions probably started a little later, and it was what you can say, it was Rajaraja who conceived these inscriptions as a document, and he started constructing these documents over a period of time, started updating that, and then the subsequent kings followed that practice, and even the Pandyas followed the same practice when it came to the second Pandyan Empire under Bharatachandra Pandya. So we do not have the exact genealogy of the mythical, or what you can say, the early Cholas or the Sangam Cholas. To a large extent, we have details of the third Sangam Cholas, starting with Karigal Swarna and a few kings before him. And then there was a large gap from about, you can say, 5th century right up to 9th century. The Cholas were almost extinct, because that was a period when most part of Tamil Nadu was under, we cannot say dynasty, you can say a consortium of chieftains called the Kalabras. The Kalabra period lasted for about 350 years. These Kalabras probably came from outside Tamil Nadu. Some, according to some scholars, they came from Hassan district in Karnataka, and some say that they came from the Nalamala hills of Andhra Pradesh. But they were mostly mountain tribes who came to Tamil Nadu in search of, you can say, a place to settle down. And since the Pandyas had occupied the northern part of Tamil Nadu, they were pushed to the central part of Tamil Nadu. And there were a couple of inscriptions of these Kalabras that talk about their king defeating the Chola Chera and the Pandya kings. So probably the Cholas and the Cheras were still there, but only as a very, you can say, a vassal or a very small minor ruling dynasty. They were not a full-fledged dynasty, a full-fledged kingdom. And the Pandyas were actually pushed to one corner of Tamil Nadu. They started ruling from Tirunelveli, while Madurai came under the Kalabras. And the Pandyas were vassals to the Kalabras. So probably the Cholas still existed in some form, but we do not know from where they were ruling. See, the actual record of Chola starts with Vijayalaya Chola, the medieval Cholas, or you can say the later Cholas, from 846. Okay. So the records of Chola start from 846, the inscriptional evidences, but they have given the genealogy of their earlier kings, and that includes some mythical kings also, like Manu and Ikshwaku, and they claim to be the Solar dynasty. So we do not have the exact details of who founded this dynasty, though we have a list of kings. Edward Dawson gives about more than about 30 kings who belong to the Sangam and early Sangam periods, or pre-Sangam periods from 3020. But again, there is no record to exactly verify these details. Probably I picked up details from various sources, literature and other stuff, and yeah, just to give the genealogy. But we don't have inscriptional evidences to exactly tell who ruled when and from where.
Okay. So you mentioned about the inscription that Rajarajan wrote. So is it there somewhere for the public to view?
Everywhere. It is there almost everywhere. If you go to all the inscriptions in Tanjavur big temple, or you can say 70% of the inscriptions in Tanjavur temples were inscribed during Rajarajan's period. We have Rajendra Chola.
All start with the genealogy, and is that right?
It doesn't. The genealogy is given in some other inscription. In Tanjavur temple, actually, the first inscription, when you can say, the Chadikeshwara shrine in Tanjavur temple, just in front of that is the first inscription that starts with Sri Thirumagal Pola. All Rajarajan's inscriptions start with Thirumagal Pola. Because see, the thing is, in those days, there was a practice of naming the son after their father. So the grandson takes the grandfather's name. So there will be too many kings with the same name. There are 2 Parantaka Cholas, there are 3 Rajarajans, 3 Rajendrans, 3 Kolotunga. So you do not know which inscription belongs to which king. Okay, so it was Rajarajan who started that practice of actually documenting with a letterhead and a signature. So all Rajarajan's inscriptions start with Thirumagal Pola. So let people go to any temple, if they start reading the inscription, if the inscription starts with Thirumagal Pola, it is Rajarajan's inscription. If the inscription starts with Tirumanya Valara, it is Rajendra's inscription. If the inscription starts with Tingalayana, it's Rajarajan's inscription. And if it starts with Tirumariya Sengol 1 or Tirumariya Sengol, it is Rajendra's second. So it was Rajarajan who set this practice. And they can go to any temple. Say, Rajarajan's inscriptions available in a lot of temples. Thiruvallam, the temples and the Thiruvallam temple, the Tanjavur temple, even temples in Karnataka, southern Karnataka. Even I was there in the Kaliyur temple. We see Rajarajan's inscription there in Kaliyur and Tadimalangi temples.
Oh, wow.
So Rajarajan's inscriptions are there for everyone to see. There are a lot of they can just go to the Epigraphica Indica and get the details of where these inscriptions are. There are plenty of inscriptions. Rajarajan's inscriptions can be found everywhere.
Wow.
He was the one who started this.
So you mentioned Karnataka. How vast was their kingdom at the peak of their rule?
See, even though the medieval Cholas, or we can say later Cholas, they started with Vijayalaya Chola. And Vijayalaya Chola at that point in time was ruling only a very small dominion. It was restricted to only Orayur, about 30 square kilometers around Orayur. And it was a very small dominion, and he was a vassal to the Pallava king, Aparajita Pallava. But the kingdom started developing during Aditya Chora's period, his son. During Vijayalaya Chola, he managed to expand the territory into the Kaveri Delta, Tanjavur region. He defeated the Muttarayas of Tanjavur, and he brought Tanjavur under his control, and he shifted the capital from Orayur to Tanjavur. After that, it was Aditya Chola who defeated the Pallavas and brought another part of Tamil Nadu called Tondai Mandalam under the Chola rule. But the expansion, a vast expansion, started during Parantaka Chola's period. It was Aditya Chola's son. It was Parantaka who actually invaded the southern territories, managed to win the entire south, brought the entire Tamil-speaking region right up to Kanyakumari under his control, and even he invaded Sri Lanka twice. And even though he was victorious, he did not occupy that land. But he was victorious. He conducted a couple of successful invasions into Sri Lanka. But these were all mostly, you can say, a very limited expansion of the Cholas. The actual expansion of Cholas started with Rajaraja Chola in 988. Rajaraja came to power in 985, and from Rajaraja we call them as imperial Cholas, because the territorial imperialism of the Cholas started with Rajaraja. And Rajarajan's invasions were not just restricted to one specific territory. Actually, before Rajarajan, they were more of the Cholas were more contented with the territories they occupied in Tamil Nadu. They were okay with by bringing the Chera and the Pandya kingdoms under their control. But it was Rajaraja who broke that barrier. He broke all the barriers, in fact, the linguistic barrier, the natural barrier, the cultural barrier, whatever barriers he had. And it was during his period that the Chola kingdom started expanding. At the peak, we can say, during Rajaraja and later Rajendra's period, the physical entity of the Chola Empire I'm not talking about the influence. The physical entity of the Chola Empire extended from the southern bank of Tungabhadra, the modern day Ballari district of Karnataka, and extended right up to three-fourths of Sri Lanka. And it included Maldives, and it included Mauritius and the Lakshadweep of the Arabian Sea. And the influence later during Rajendra spread even more when he invaded the when he sent his army to invade the territories right up to Bangladesh. So his armies crossed the Andhra Pradesh, the eastern Andhra Pradesh coast. They entered Orissa, they entered Chhattisgarh, then moved into Bengal, then into Bangladesh, and went right up to Ganges, the eastern Gangetic plains. And then a little later, Rajendra invaded the Southeast Asian countries. About 1025, he invaded Kedah, which was then called Gadaram. And from Kedah, his influence, he ransacked actually 14 ports across the modern day Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Myanmar. So we can see it was twofold. One was a physical entity of the empire that stretched from Tungabhadra, the southern banks of Tungabhadra. It occupied the whole of South India, right up to the northern part of, or the central part of Sri Lanka on one side. And from the east west coast, from the Arabian Sea right to, you can say, the eastern Andhra Pradesh coast. But again, during Rajendra's period, the influence of the Cholas spread even further to the eastern parts of India and across the seas to Southeast Asia. So that was the maximum extent they had. But later, they lost some of the territories, then it started shrinking, then it started developing. But you can say their peak was in about 1030 CE under Rajendra.
Wow. This is so fascinating because, they had such a huge influence. But I remember you telling, when you participated in one of our earlier YouTube series, Part1, you answered one of the child's question that they actually did not conquer, and you just repeated that they did not conquer as much as they invaded. So how did they, first of all, why did they not conquer? Was that just not a thing that they followed? Two, how did they keep a hold on that kingdom? Did all those Southeast Asian countries come under their rule? Or how did that happen?
See, actually, there are two things. One, regions that they directly controlled. The other regions where they had invaded, they had won battles and they defeated the kings, but they did not exercise their direct control over those territories. If you look at the Chola history, if I go through their battles and the regions they had conquered, what I see is my personal opinion, or I have got it vetted by a few scholars also. Basically, they were interested in conquering territories and directly ruling territories that brought them revenue. For them, revenue was very important for the simple reason that they had a large army to feed. They had about 1 million strong army. So they had to generate revenue. You conquer a region and you bring them under control. Once you bring a region under the Chola control, then you have to set up administration there. Once you started setting up an administration, you are going to incur expenditure. And once you start incurring expenditure, the central granary or the treasury in Tanjavur will not be able to compensate for whatever expenses that are incurred on a regular basis. So once you conquer, that particular territory should be self-sufficient in generating revenue. Then what they do is they occupy that region. They appoint one of their sons or someone from the royal family as a governor there. We used to call them Vadanda Nayakan. So he becomes a viceroy or a governor of that region. He will have his own army. He will have his own minister, and he will have he probably had his own revenue structure. And the revenue generated from that region was used to spend on all these administration expenses. So that's how it is. So if they conquer a region which did not generate enough revenue for them, you conquer a region, you spend 100 rupees and then set up your region, and that region generates only 50 rupees, then that governor will be coming to Tanjavur every now and then and asking for money, which the Cholas could not afford because of the large, the empire and the mouths they had to feed. So probably they went by this logic. So if I conquer a territory, that territory should be in a position to generate revenue for me. And if it doesn't generate, there's no point in administrating that. So in that case, what they do is they appoint a viceroy. That viceroy will not have a day-to-day, will not have a say in the day-to-day administration of that empire. The king who was defeated will be handed over the reins. He will rule the kingdom. He will have his own revenue. He will have his own expenditure, everything. But subject to 4 conditions, he will pay an annual tribute to the Chola Emperor. Second thing, he has to accept the supremacy of the Chola Emperor, sovereignty of Chola Emperor. Third one, he has to fund an army of his own and should keep that army ready for any Chola invasion. In fact, Cholas require additional army or additional personnel, then this particular king should be able to provide that additional support. And fourth, there will be a viceroy appointed for that region who will not interfere in the day-to-day affairs of the kingdom. He'll just keep a watch on what's going on there. And whenever he finds something suspicious or whenever he finds something detrimental to the Chola interest is happening in that kingdom, he will just go back and report that to the emperor. And then they will decide whether to send an army and invade the territory or punish that king. So there are two things they had. One set of kingdoms which they directly administered, particularly the Pandyas, Cheras, territory in Tamil Nadu, then the Karnataka, the Gangas, Kadambas, and part of Kadamba territory, and in Andhra Pradesh, Sitpuri and Baginadu, and part of the Vegi territory. These territories and part of Sri Lanka, they had direct administration because these territories were mostly delta regions. If you look at these territories, they are either Kaveri Delta, Godavari Delta, Krishna Delta, or Tamarabarati Delta. It's a delta region that supplied the Cholas with enough grains to feed with their armies, and also generated revenue to help the governors of this region to take care of that territory. Whereas the other territories, they did not bother, they invaded. And in most of the battles which they waged against the Chalukyas, they used to cross Tungabhadra. There are numerous battles. In fact, in 120 odd years, they waged about 50 battles with the Chalukyas. And they led their army right up to Kolhapur in Maharashtra. It's not that the battles happened just across Tungabhadra. They penetrated deep. But most of these battles ended with the Cholas, collecting a large booty and then returning. They did not, they did not control any of these regions across Tungabhadra, because culturally it's very different. Even today, you are in Bangalore. Culturally, the northern Karnataka is totally different from what you see in southern Karnataka, particularly the Hyderabad Karnataka, the old Hyderabad Karnataka and the Bombay Karnataka. The Bombay Karnataka comprising of the modern days of Hubli, Dharwad, Belgaum, Bagalkot, Bijapur. They have a different culture. The Hyderabad Karnataka, like Raichur or Kalaburgi, Bidar, they have a different culture. And this culture is different to the southern Karnataka culture. And southern Karnataka culture was more or less, was very close to the Tamil culture. You can see that in terms of temples or food, except for some minor differences with the local delicacies. Most of the other things were common to southern Karnataka, southern part of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu and parts of Kerala. Whereas the northern Karnataka is totally different. Again, the northern part of Andhra Pradesh, like the adjoining Orissa, that form part of the Kalinga kingdom, was totally different. So their conquest was basically actually based on two factors. One, whether the particular region generated any revenue for the Chola Empire. Second, if it is possible to rule over that territory, because it was culturally and everything was different, culturally and geographically different from the other territories. Which
thinking about it, it's actually a very smart thing to do, no? So you're like, that's exactly what we look at even today when we talk about acquisition of companies. The cultural fit is one of the biggest things that. So
exactly.
It's because very beautiful to hear that this was done centuries ago by such great.
Exactly. Because being an imperial empire, they had to look into various factors.
Yeah.
Not just go and occupy some territory which you cannot hold on for a long period. You take Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is totally different from the Indian culture, where they were able to hold on to Sri Lanka only for about 77 years. See the case of the Pandya kingdom. They managed to hold, and the Gangapadi region, Talakadu and the modern day, you can say Bangalore, starting from Bangalore. The Bengaluru, Ramanagara, Chamarajanagar, Mandya, Mysore districts. and they managed to hold on to the territory for more than 125 years. So it's a question of, you need to know who you can control, who you cannot control.
Wow.
You can't just go and conquer some country, put a viceroy there, you put even 100 or 1 million people or 1 million soldiers there. They will not be able to survive because it's totally different for them.
Such a great lesson we can take even
Yeah,
for today's world.
yeah,
So
exactly.
in I remember when I was reading Ponniyin Selvan, the great epic, there was one part which said that Arulmozhivarman was probably the first person who wanted supplies from Tanjavur, and he was not taking, or he was not earning the revenue himself from Sri Lanka. Is that right? That he was Arulmozhivarman being Rajarajan in his young age. Is that a factually right thing?
Well, I don't think so. For a simple reason that if you read Ponniyin Selvan, except for 3 lines of history, the rest other things which Kalki had written was fiction. The only 3 things that went with history was Aditya Karigalan was murdered, Sundara Soran was sick, and there was a confusion as to who should succeed Sundara Soran, whether it was Sundara Soran's nephew, Madurantakar, or Aditya Karigalan's or Sundara Soran's second son, Arulmozhivarman. Except for this, the rest are all fiction. If we look at the history, there was no invasion of Sri Lanka during Sundara Soran's period.
Oh, okay.
The last invasion that took place before Rajarajan's invasion after he became king in 985 was in 944 when Parantaka invaded the Sri Lanka territory. But he was quite successful, but he had to withdraw the forces because the Rashtrakuta king Krishna III was invading the northern part of Chola Empire. So he had to beat a hasty retreat. If you look at the history, that's what I was explaining in my session the other day in the Cholas in Iram. If you go with the Buddhist chronicles or even with the Chola records, after 944, a full-fledged invasion of the Cholas took place only in 991 after Rajarajan became the emperor. Between that, in 47 years, there was no invasion as such. There was only one particular, you can say, expedition to Sri Lanka probably during Sundara Soran's period, which did not succeed. Because in Sundara Soran, one of Sundara Soran's inscription dated 963, he talks about his general Kodumbalur Velir, Parantaka, Kodumbalur Syria Velir Parantakan, died at an undisclosed place in Sri Lanka. So probably, according to scholars like Appadurayar and Nilakanta Shastri and others, probably after the Pandyas were defeated by Aditya Karigalan, an expedition was sent to Sri Lanka as an extension of this invasion of Pandya kingdom, because the Sri Lankans were supporting the Pandyas at that point in time. So probably there was an expedition that did not go through as planned. Probably Velir was killed and they had to come back. Apart from this one particular reference, because there is a reference of Mahinda IV, the Sri Lankan king was ruling at that point in time, and there is an inscription in Anuradhapura called the Vesagiriya inscription. There he talks about a Tamil invasion. He doesn't talk about a Chola invasion. He talks about a Tamil invasion of Sri Lanka, and his general Sena defeated the Tamils and put them back. So he has given a lot of gifts and grants to his general. So that particular inscription is dated 964. Probably if you put together the Sundara Sora's inscription and Mahinda's inscription, probably this is what probably happened, right? The Cholas, as an extension of their victory over the Pandyas, probably sent a small force under Kodumbalur Velir to Sri Lanka, and that did not succeed, and Velir was killed, and the Cholas had to come back. Other than that, we do not see any major invasions between Parantaka's invasion in 944 and Rajaraja's invasion in 991. So probably whatever Kalki has written is a fiction, but again, it's a fiction. Otherwise, to write the 3 lines of history, you need Nilakanta Shastri. You don't need Kalki.
Right.
So to make those 3 lines into 3,000 pages, you need Kalki.
I know. It was one of the best novels that I've read in recent times. I'm happy that I actually read it in Tamil. So thanks to Kalki for actually rekindling my interest in reading Tamil novels as well. So
that's a Kalki's great.
Kodumbalur general that you mentioned, his daughter is the one who married Rajaraja Cholan later, right? Is that right?
There is no official record on that.
There is no official record on that.
Rajarajan's first wife was from Chanakya dynasty. She was from Telugu. She was called Logama Devi or Ulagama Devi. And then comes this lady.
Vanadi.
And even though Vanadi is the name that is given in Kalki's Ponniyin Selvan, Rajendra Chola always refers to his mother as Tribhuvanama Devi.
Oh,
He doesn't mention, to my knowledge, he doesn't mention Vanadi anywhere. He talks about his mother as Tribhuvanama Devi. And even in the Karandai copper plates, where he, what you can say, he merged about 51 villages that was distributed among 1,008 Brahmins. He created a cluster of, what you can say, grouped a cluster of villages and made one Brahmadeyam, and he called that as Tribhuvanama Devi Chadurveda Mangalam. So Rajendra doesn't, to my knowledge, I don't think Rajendra refers to Vanadi anyway. He only refers to his mother only as Tribhuvanama Devi.
okay.
And I do not know whether she is from Kodumbalur or not, because I do not see any records on it.
Okay, so let's talk about the battles. We talked about invasions, how they had, how they were holding on to the territories, some influence, some direct regiment. Tell me about some of the exciting battles that were fought, and especially about the I forget the name of the king who was very old, but who was on the elephant, or who was carried, and who was fighting with both the swords. So can you tell us that story? So it was very fascinating for me to hear that story.
See, again, the king mentioned, just mentioned was Vijayalaya Solan. Vijayalaya Solan, according to legends, we do not have anything historical records. According to legend, was the one who fight with both hands. Okay, but again, what you have just mentioned is from Ponniyin Selvan. And historically, Vijayalaya Solan did not go to that battle at all. It was his son
really?
Aditya Solan who participated in the battle. Vijayalaya was too old. He was about 80 years old when this battle took place. And as I said, we can just differentiate the fiction from the history. And Pandaratar has made it very clear in his book that Vijayalaya did not participate. And even in the Tripuramba records, we did not see Vijayalaya Solan's name. Actually, it was Aditya Solan who fought the battle alongside the Pallava king, Aparajita Pallava, and the Prithvipati, the first, the Ganga king. But when it comes to battles, we do not have any major records of battles till Rajarajan's period. There was only, even Rajarajan's period also, Rajarajan's inscriptions, they do not give much details about how the battles were fought. He gives a list of countries he conquers. He conquered. And so it starts with Kandalur Salai, which is the modern day Valiyasala in Thiruvananthapuram. And he gives only the list. He says Kandalur Salai, Venginadu, Ganganadu, Nodambapadi, Tarigaipadi. He gives the list. Only Rajendra started the practice of describing the battles in his inscriptions. And when it comes to Rajendra's inscription, he clearly says, this is the battle I fought, this is how the city looked, and this is the king I defeated, this is what I brought for you. So that, and he just actually developed upon whatever Rajarajan was. Rajarajan was giving a bland description of the list of countries there, yes, the one. Rajendra went one step forward, and his sons actually went even further, one step further, and they have described the battles in great detail. When it comes to the records of Rajadirajan, Rajendra II, or Veera Rajendra, they give a lot of details about how the battles were fought. The Chola battles actually, as I said, the imperial battles started with Rajarajan. But not all the battles ended the way they wanted to. There were a few setbacks, could be because of various factors other than their army. For example, one of their major battles they fought sometime around 2005-2006. That was the first time Rajaraja was leading his army across the Ganga. Till such time, the Cholas were content to rule only the southern part of Karnataka. That is the first time he is leading an army across Tungabhadra into the Chalukya territory, because the Chalukya king Satyashraya was actually playing some games in Vengi, where Rajarajan's son-in-law was living. So, and he doesn't give any major details about the battle, but Rajendra gives a lot of details about this battle in Thiruvalagadu copper plates. And he describes how Rajarajan was riding his horse, how he managed to penetrate through the opposition ranks and inflict maximum damages. And he gives all the details of that battle. But interestingly, Rajarajan could not progress beyond a certain point because of some factors. Because there is a Chalukya inscription, and not exactly a Chalukyan royal inscription, but an inscription in Chalukya territory that says that Rajarajan came with an army of 900,000 men, which is
Wow.
1 lakh less than 1 million. And he managed to create a lot of havoc across Tungabhadra. He penetrated deep into Tungabhadra, but he was stopped by the Chalukya king Satyashraya at a place called Donur. I went to that village also. At a place called Donur, it's currently in Bijapur district. Then it was called Donavur, now it is called Donur. And he was pushed back across Tungabhadra, back into his territory. And Satyashraya was able to regain whatever territory Rajarajan had occupied till that point.
Okay.
Very interestingly, Rajarajan's inscription or Rajendra's inscription, they don't talk about this upset, this setback they had. They just stop with Satyashraya's defeat and occupation of certain territories across Tungabhadra. But interestingly, Rajendra hints at this setback in his inscription, saying that my father was so, you can say, upset that he could not progress beyond a certain point and capture and destroy the Chalukyan capital of Manyaketa, which is the present-day Malkhed in Gulbarga district, that he, upon returning to the Chola Empire, he refused to come to the palace and he stayed in a temple for a few days. He was so upset that he said that Mandai Kadagam Yeriyum Varai Girigara Viharam Sevadillai, which means that till I burn or destroy the Chalukyan capital, I won't return to my palace. So, which gives a hint that even Rajarajan was somewhere, probably because the terrain was totally new to him. Because the first time they are entering that part of Karnataka, and that part of Karnataka is a plateau. It's a Deccan plateau. It is not like southern Karnataka where you have the topography and geography similar to other parts of Tamil Nadu. So probably that rocky terrain and plateau dissuaded him from proceeding further, and he had to beat a retreat. And so this is one good battle. But Rajendra and Rajendra's sons fought a lot of battles. Even Rajaraja's battles, most of the battles were fought by his son, Rajendra. Rajarajan made Rajendra his, what you can say, the Soda Senadipati, or the supreme commander of Chola forces in 991. And right from that day, it was Rajendra was carrying out most of the battles for his father. And he had his headquarters in Karnataka. Very interesting. He stayed at a place called Kaivaranadu, which is the modern day Chintamadi, Chikavalago.
Okay.
And he had constructed a palace there called Vikramasorapuram, and then he stayed there. So, but Rajendra fought a lot of battles, the Ganga invasion, Gajarik invasions, the invasions of Chalukya territory in 10, 12, 13, then the Gadaram invasion when he marched his army across the seas. And his son, Rajadirajan, actually died in the battlefield. That was a very interesting battle where the Cholas penetrated as far as Kolhapur in Maharashtra without being challenged by the Chalukyas. But actually the Chalukyas were up to something else. They lured Chola deep into their territory, surrendered them, and then they hit back. So the Cholas were almost 600 kilometers away from their territory, from Tungabhadra. And they were surrounded, and the battle was it was a very bloody battle. And according to Rajadirajan was actually supported in that battle by his younger brother, Rajendra II, or Rajendra Deva. And both the brothers had gone right up to Kolhapur, where they hoisted the Chola flag there and built a Vijay Stambam, or the victory pillar. And 60 kilometers from there, when they were returning, they were stopped by the Chalukya forces, which, according to Rajendra II, resembled like an ocean. And the entire Chalukya forces concentrated on only one person, that was Rajendra. And actually, Rajendra was holding back as a reserve army, Rajendra II. So, they completely surrounded Rajadiraja. They killed him. Actually, they hurt him he was mortally injured. And the Cholas did not have a place to go because they were deep into the Chalukya territory. So they started scattering all over. They knew Shri II, who was holding himself back. Then he led an army. Then he was just in time. He penetrated it inside the Chalukya ranks, reached his brother just in time to take over the reign from him. His brother was actually dying in the battlefield. He was just in time, took over the reins. Then he cremated his brother there itself. Then he fought back and managed to take the Cholas safely back into their territory. So the Rajendra's sons have written a lot about their battles. There are quite a number of battles.
And have they also talked about their own strategies to win? No, they don't have the strategy.
They have not, they have not written anything about their strategy as such.
Okay.
They have given the details of how the battle was fought.
Hmm.
This is how the battle went. This is how we killed. This is the number of people we killed. This is not number of people. This is the generals we killed, the princes we killed, and this is what we recovered from them. The booty we collected from them. But they did not. No one, even Raja Rajendra, they have not given any details about their strategy as to how they planned their attack on their enemies.
Okay.
Probably the strategy differed from one battle to another. They
Of
did not
course,
have
yeah.
one single strategy
Sure.
across all battles.
I heard another story about the Tirunarayanapuram Eri, that the army of the Chola king constructed. Can you tell us that story?
Veeranarayan Eri was built sometime around 935 to 940. It was
hearing from you that they were probably the first ones to introduce democracy, that they had a voting system. Can you tell us more about that?
See, when it comes to local administration, the elections were there even during Sangam period.
Can you tell us about the crimes and punishments also?
When the early punishments were more, psychological, where a person